Alright, what's going on guys, UsageofActionz here, and welcome to my second Outlast characters video. If you want to check out my first one I made, you can go ahead and click the link popping up right now. But I actually forgot some characters, and I also did not do the DLC characters for Outlast Whistleblower in that video, so that is what this video is making up for. So in total now, through these two videos, I have covered every character in the game of Outlast. So with that being said, I hope you guys do enjoy the video. If you do, make sure to like button, new to my channel, subscribe, and let's go ahead and hop into it. So starting off, we are going to talk about the first people I did not talk about in my first characters video, which I got reminded that I didn't say anything about them, is the twins. So both twins are pale, muscular, and hairy middle-aged men who completely lack any clothing, are slightly drenched in blood and dirt, and have scars on the sides of their stomachs, making it likely they were conjoined before splitting up. The taller twin has a hump-shaped head with a neutral face and missing teeth, having dark brown hair everywhere but the top of his head. The shorter twin looks much the same, but has a sterner face and messy black hair covering his entire head. Despite being variants, they lack any deformities caused by the morphogenic engine whatsoever, though their features could suggest they are inbred. The twins speak in incredibly calm tones, never raising their voices, and speak casually about everything. However, they seem to be murderous cannibals, as they usually talk about cutting Miles open and eating parts of his body such as his liver and tongue. They have what is almost a hive mind, sharing the same thoughts and same psychopathic personalities, talking in choppy sentences and sometimes finishing each other. They are devoted to Father Martin, making it likely that their insanity bleeds into believing the Walrider religion and simply walk when chasing Miles instead of running. This, combined with their lack of clothing and never speaking while chasing Miles, makes them almost completely undetectable and silent. They are also senile, as evidenced by their deadpan use of sarcasm once they see Miles disappear, if you will. The twins also appear to be very calm and intelligent when compared to other inmates within the asylum, and have some semblance of humanity left in them. For instance, they can open and close doors rather than mindlessly bashing them down like other variants do. Neither of them wear any clothing whatsoever. I think that's something that shocks most people, is that they are completely butt-ass naked. It sure shocked me. They seem to prefer ambushing targets in long corridors, using their numbers to flank Miles. They are silent killers and therefore do not run or talk while chasing Miles. They walk calmly rather than sprinting and prefer to kill their victims in silence. Their weapons of choice seem to be only iron machete-like blades. Unlike the other variants that roam the asylum, getting too close to them either will result in an instantaneous death rather than getting hit and taking damage. In addition to staying quiet, the absence of noisy accessories and appendages make it incredibly difficult to locate their exact location without running into them, requiring the player to stay more vigilant and observant than with other variants. And then there's not much known about their background other than they are psychopaths. They are at Mount Massive Asylum, and they seem to constantly talk about indulging it to their desire of murdering Miles and possibly eating his tongue and liver, like I said earlier. And they are also obedient to Father Martin for reasons unknown. They are presumed deceased because the Murkoff Corporation and the Walrider, I'm pretty sure, took about everybody in that asylum to keep things from getting out, except you know who. We'll get onto him later. Some other little fact: the brown-haired twin is actually the taller twin, the black-haired one is a shorter twin, and both of their eyes are brown. Next up, we have variants. Variants are the results of the exposure of patients from the Mount Massive Asylum to the morphogenic engine created by scientist Dr. Rudolph Wernicke. The after effects of the therapy altered their mind and provoked physical deformities. The outcomes of those after effects can't be determined, thus giving to those afflicted the name of variants. Most of the variants have pale skin and mutilations, likely having to do with the experiments they were once exposed to. They differ in ways. While some are thin and weak, others are massive and brutally strong, such as Chris Walker. Their clothing ranges from standard psychiatric attire to ripped and torn shorts. There are some variants that are more aware of their surroundings, an example being the variant in the sewer who questions whether Wernicke is deceased, and the pyromaniac variant in the cafeteria in the male ward who explains that he would rather die than stay in the asylum, and points Miles towards the exit. There are also variants who are not permanently hostile and attack only if the player moves into close proximity, variants who assist or hinder the player with cryptic hints or stories, and variants who ignore the player completely. For the most part, the humanity of some of the variants seem to have left them at some stage during their torture, turning into sadistic, cruel, and ruthless pursuers. Others tend to become terrified, others seem to be prone to self-harm, and also a few of them are slightly helpful. Some variants seem to be followers of Father Martin. Among their abilities is their physical strength and stamina, being able to smash doors, pull organs out of bodies, destroy reinforced glass, and chase after victims. However, some variants are shown not to possess these attributes, since Upshur fought off and overpowered a considerable number of them at several points throughout the game. Even though most of them act in unexpected ways, many of them are capable of high reasoning, proven when they execute plans such as tracking down Miles' hiding spots and listening for sounds. So if you don't understand, the variants are basically all of the enemies you see in Outlast, except some of them have certain names such as Chris Walker, Dr. Traeger. Those are special, as I like to call them, boss variants, and then the other random patients around the asylum are just called normal variants. They don't have a specific name. So next up we have Murkoff's Tactical Division, also known as Markov Tactical. It refers to a group of private military contractors, or PMCs, employed by the Murkoff Corporation. The contractors sent out are generally well built. Tactical operators are usually seen wearing heavy flak jackets, as well as olive green fatigues, army combat helmets, tan combat boots, tactical gloves, and goggles. Their equipment usually consists of M4 carbines with a attached weapons light or handheld flashlight. They are able to have the equipment to seal most sorts of doors clamped shut with screwed on metal. Their personalities generally tend to be consisted of foul-mouthed, gruff-voiced personnel who share similar personalities with most security guards. Most of them are disgusted by the behavior the variants have shown and the events that have referenced this. This is mostly shown when the second team of personnel are examining Traeger's corpse and are discussing his death. Some Murkoff workers are shown dead with bullet holes in the walls behind them, hinting that the tactical team that's sent in to contain the situation were also instructed to kill everyone, including employees. This is why basically everybody that was in the asylum, except one person, we'll get to him, we're getting there, but everybody that was in the asylum is presumed dead. Next character we have is Jeremy Blair. Jeremy Blair was Murkoff's Executive Vice President of Global Development, the head of Mount Massive Asylum and Project Walrider, and a supervisor to Waylon Park. He served as the primary antagonist of Outlast whistleblower and one of the key individuals behind the morphogenic engine experiments that led to the events of Outlast. Like many Murkoff employees, Jeremy Blair is an arrogant, greedy, and corrupt man who cared more about the potential windfall of Murkoff's brutal experiments than their victims. From his appearances, Blair was shown to be ruthless, sadistic, and cunning, as shown in his delight in mocking Waylon about his attempt to expose Murkoff and asking him if he wants to volunteer for the morphogenic engine program, and pretending as if Waylon agreed. Blair tried desperately to keep the truth about Murkoff's illegal experiments at Mount Massive a secret, and even tried to kill Waylon Park twice to silence him. Ultimately, Blair's desperate attempts at keeping this secret resulted in his death and Waylon Park escaping the asylum and exposing Murkoff. Prior to his death, Blair was shown to be able to take care of himself by escaping the underground lab. Blair is shown to be physically strong, as he manages to tackle Waylon to the ground and nearly strangle him until he heard Chris Walker coming and cowardly fled, believing that Walker could finish the job. It's possible that Blair intentionally injured himself at the administration block to fool people who try to leave the asylum into thinking he needs help, and when they approach him, he kills them with his knife to prevent them from escaping and exposing the chaos at the asylum. Waylon describes Blair in one of his notes as his supervisor's supervisor, and that he would have Waylon skinned, salted, and raped for a promotion and a few martinis. Blair is a slim man with fairly toned skin and a calm demeanor in his late 30s. He possesses neatly combed back hair and icy blue eyes, as well as a black suit jacket unbuttoned to reveal a white dress shirt tucked into his black pants with a black belt around his waist and matching shoes. Jeremy Blair died on September 18th, 2013 by being dismembered by Miles Upshur's Walrider. He was a male, his hair color was black, and he had blue eyes. Next up, we have the one man that actually did escape Mount Massive Asylum, Waylon Park. Not much is known about Waylon's past, but according to Jeremy Blair, he graduated from Berkeley with exceptional marks. At some point in his life, he met Lisa, to whom he got married to and had 2 sons. He later got a job in the field of software consulting and at some point acquired a 2-week contract deal with Murkoff Corporation at Mount Massive Asylum, with a level 3 security clearance where he could maintain the morphogenic engine and additional programming alongside Murkoff's research and development division. After a few days, due to Murkoff's strict security protocols, he was unable to even talk to his wife and kids. Waylon developed a deep-seated distrust of the profit-motivated scientists and doctors leading dangerous and irresponsible experiments on their patients. Realizing he had made a mistake and regretting his choices, Waylon had decided to go behind their back and expose Murkoff's inhumane experiments to the public. Waylon's personality prominently contrasts from Miles, as evidenced by his notes. Depicted as a nervous and gentle man carrying caring only about surviving to see his family instead of the more senile and aggressive persona of Miles. Almost every note mentions his wife and illustrates how much he cares about her as well as his children. He starts contemplating suicide during the riots, believing it to be an easier way to avoid suffering a fate worse than death by the hands of the asylum's deranged inmates, but never goes through with it. He has a high sense of mortality, being one of the few Murkoff employees who actually rebels against its corporation's inhumane actions, and has a very poetic way of writing. This shows that he is very intelligent and shows that he is not a violent man, unlike Miles, who frequently insults his enemies. The two times Waylon remotely loses his politeness is when he's trying not to laugh upon seeing the death of Gluskin and his pragmatic comments about leaving Jeremy Blair to die of his injuries. A small but interesting fact is that even when being hunted down, Waylon rarely ever slams a door, always gently closing it, another contrast to Miles, who regularly slams doors very violently.
God.
And the last character I will be talking about today is Eddie Gluskin. Eddie Gluskin, commonly known as the Groom, was a variant who ruthlessly pursued Waylon Park with the intention of making him his wife. He serves as the secondary antagonist of Outlast Whistleblower. All that is known about Eddie Gluskin's early life is that he was sexually abused by his father and uncle. Prior to being admitted at Mount Massive Asylum, Eddie was a serial killer who mutilated women. There are implications that his insanity stems from being sexually abused as a child. Gluskin has a misleadingly kind personality. He is, by and large, very charming, though upon being rejected, he can become violent. He is obsessed with the idea of his perfect bride to the point where he mutilates people he deems mentally acceptable to make them physically acceptable as well. He appears to be only interested in taking men and removing and adding to create a woman by removing, let's just say, man parts and making him look like a female and act like a female. His charming personality often slips when he is rejected, and he teeters dangerously between complimenting his bride's appearance and personality and insulting them, often using violent slurs. He also refuses to accept the difference between what he believes and the actual reality, and he completely denies the well-documented sexual abuse he suffered. When confronted with photographic evidence of the abuse, he alternates between trying to laugh it off as fake and flying into a berserk rage. He also refuses to admit he killed his victims, insisting that the women in the photographs were just sleeping. After being exposed to the morphogenic engine, Eddie develops a lisp, possibly some external injuries to his voice box and lip. He also enjoys listening to and singing romantic melodies. Gluskin is seen as a very tall and muscular man, middle-aged, with a black slick-back undercut hairstyle, which is neatly combed down with blue eyes. Due to an exposure to the morphogenic engine, Eddie's face is covered with red blisters and skin peelings. He dons old-timey gentleman clothing crudely sewn together into a dirty dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up slightly, a dark blue bow tie and matching waistcoat, as well as black fingerless gloves, matching work boots, belt, cargo pants, and armbands. Whilst being strapped into one of the morphogenic engine pods, Eddie has his clothes stripped off, leaving him with only a pair of white underwear whilst being exposed to the engine. A number of tubes can be seen entering every orifice of his body. Nicknames that Eddie Gluskin has is the Groom, the Man Downstairs, the Thing Below, and Mr. Gluskin. He was born in either 1966 or 1967. He was 46 years old. He died on September 18th, 2013 by being impaled on an iron rod due to a mechanical reaction caused by Waylon Park. He was a male, he had black hair, and he had blue eyes. Alright guys, and that is all the characters in the game of Outlast. It's such an amazing, spooky game. I'm always gonna love it, I know I am. But with that being said, I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did, make sure to like button. You guys new to my channel, subscribe. And yeah, I will see you guys in the next video.